I've been thinking about, I'm trying to move out of my parents' house and stuff. And I've been thinking, I don't just want to get an apartment and like do something lame that'll get shut down by whatever, whether the grid fails or whatever, whether there's lockdowns and stuff. Dreaming big, we got Neptune and Pisces trying to dream big and such. So I'm thinking, I'm looking for people. I've been talking with one guy who might be interested in more of a, definitely not a cult, like some, I suppose everything is a cult in a sense, but it's like the just something of an intentional community, perhaps. I'm not exactly, people will jump to conclusions about this, but I'm taking it slow. It's just, thinking about this type of thing, and I don't know if you know anyone interested or you'd be interested yourself, but just kind of putting that topic out there, in terms of, and this would not be a complete Luddite thing. It's like there would hopefully be someone involved who knows about like AI and technology and stuff, such that we could still participate in like the, the redemption of Armon and stuff.
Loving our creator and loving our neighbors, loving people, with the help of these tools, which are force multipliers.
We can make technology that does not destroy. Here, Steiner called for the lab bench to become the altar. It is we, by our wrong concept of electricity, we, in the realm of where concepts are, have placed a different being in front of the real being of electricity. We have the wrong concept, and therefore we allow Ahrimanic beings to act as demonic beings within electricity. And even this can be redeemed.
Not just like a completely go off cabin in the woods style to like the, regressing or whatever. Like,
what else is there to do with the mental consciousness structure? It's atomized everything down to the atom bomb.
It's done.
Yeah, it's exhausted. What is left? There has to be a transformation, a re-spiritualization of it, to where it's a-rational, not a regression back to irrationality or the mythical consciousness structure or the magical. It can't be a regression back, like Terence McKenna used to call it, the archaic revival. It's not an archaic revival. It's a complete transformation. It's something new. It will retain elements that worked in previous spiritualities. They're like reincarnation, that's a fact. So that's non-negotiable as far as I'm concerned. So that will be retained from past systems, but it's got to be a new transformation that takes all of our circumstances into account. And now today, what's different from Rome, this was the point I set out to make, and it took me a long time to get back to. What's different today is that...
Yeah, it's just kind of putting that idea out there, because ultimately that's what I'm talking about, is these in-person, face-to-face relationships that are constellating in a social context. And like
if you haven't been following my work for very long, that might not mean very much, but if you've been here a while, you'll understand why this is so significant. In martial arts, if they're teaching you how to strike through a wooden board, they'll teach you not to aim at the board. They'll teach you to aim through the board at a point on the other side. If you do this, you'll break the board. If you don't, you won't. Now, this has an interesting parallel.
So, we have this image of Peter denying Christ and then seeing him and seeing that he's seen by him. So there's a moment after the denials where Peter sees that Christ is gazing upon him and he is pierced. So there's the ways in which Christ himself is pierced, but then there's his piercing gaze, like the way in which his look affects those he looks upon. And I'm interested in what we make of that. What is the wounding gaze of love? That, and how do we see it now? Like, how is Christ's piercing gaze happening to me? And there are a number of stories. Simone Weil's story actually is an example of this, because I think that's what Herbert's poem is about, really, about drawing back from, like, not being able to meet the eye of Christ. Right. And then there's a story David Milch tells about his own conversion, if we can call it that, of a Catholic priest who looked at him, he said, as if he knew something about me I didn't yet know about myself. And so I'm interested in that, like the phenomenology of the knowing look, the piercing gaze, meeting the eye of Christ.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
that's the idea.
That's great, Chris. And you know, it plays in really nicely with we have a quote on the website for the conference. We have a quote from C.S. Lewis's Still We Have Faces. And I think the reason we need the wounding gaze is that it's part of what helps give us a real face and shatters our masks.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's.
So,
I will write that down and not give you credit for it.
no problem. Steal away.
In orthodoxy, an icon is said to be a window into heaven. You look through an icon, you don't look at an icon.
Right.
And we refuse to pierce the image that we see in the mirror with the imagination. And when Owen Barfield said, basically, when we refuse to pierce images with the imagination, we create idols, and all idols become curses.
Wow.
And that's why the mirror is this double-edged thing, you know, it flips depending on what I'm prepared to see.
This is a general truth which I apply to all representation. With any representational pattern, you're always looking through a window at something outside of time.
They go through the mirrors. His characters, they pierce the mirror, actually. They go through them, right? It becomes a portal and not just a hard thing that you can't get through, in a sense.
Constellation is the application of these two principles. It's the idea that using symbolic perception, you can look through phenomena at objects outside of time, and that by aiming at those objects, you can break through what otherwise appear to be uncrossable barriers.
I'm interested in like how you sort of step through the screen and out into real life, and I think I'm hoping we'll kind of be practicing that even as we also talk about it.
Here's Luke and I.
Go through, yeah.
And you can go through the mirror.
We were joking like, okay, I'm going back into the computer now. So there's a lot.
And the internet or social media wants to turn you into an avatar of yourself, right?
We basically create idols.
But there's a tendency to turn oneself into an avatar and to interpret other people as avatars as well, right?
Idols.
You're talking about the real. I mean, this is the medium is the message, right? So anytime we get together in the real world, that's the kind of the antidote to that.
Constellating in a social context and and because I really, I just watched that recent video of Griffin's, but he's talking about the practical implications and how it's kind of shifting the collective vibe in a sense over time towards these more ideal possible futures, or more desirable, or however you want to put it, more ontologically correct futures.
My symbolic and metaphysical analyses are attempts to distill high-order and high-fidelity representations, which will increase global psychic resolution, and perhaps also exemplify the process by which this is done. These representations should incrementally optimize the scanning of the potential space, which I mentioned before.
And yeah, that's what really calls to me, and I really hate texting, so just moving in that more embodied direction, and just kind of putting that out there. Yeah.
Well, all I got to say is that my David Koresh mullet is coming along nicely. I mean, I guess the ultimate goal here is it has to be some kind of like actually getting people together in real life somehow or another. But that's definitely fighting against the currents, the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the pneumatic swells and such. Yeah, I think a big thing with the Aquarian impulse in general is kind of this distributed, non-centralized thing in a way, where like each person is a divine vessel of, each person is a kind of image of God in their own, and they have these abilities.
The real problem which skeptics have with parapsychology and with other attempts to scientifically address seemingly anomalous phenomena is that these attempts appear to the skeptics to be a regression which is dangerously close to reaffirming the mire of superstitious folk beliefs and religious convictions which science has worked so hard to drag us out of. Even if we completely bracket our concerns regarding the reality of parapsychological phenomena, this ideological conception of techno-scientific progressivism would still be a deeply naive and crude understanding of human history in general, the nature of pre-scientific belief structures, and the philosophical implications of modern science itself. Really delving into this issue would involve delving much further into the philosophy of science, the history of science, the sociology of science, anthropology, and cultural history than I can even begin to touch upon in this particular video. But if this particular point is of interest to you, then I would highly recommend checking out some of my other videos in which I delve into the origins and limitations of techno-scientific ideologies and the less crude alternatives which we might consider. Goethe took a pen and paper and sketched for Schiller an image of the primordial form of plant life, which he claimed to have observed through his study of botany. Schiller responded by saying that this Orpflanz was not an observation but rather an idea, to which Goethe responded that he was very fortunate to be able to see ideas with his own eyes. This remark is immensely significant in that it further illustrates Goethe's conviction that nothing is hidden from us by our experiential contact with the world. If we are failing to see the formative contents of reality, then this is because of our inability to recognize the ideational or noetic elements of reality which our sensory experiences are manifestations of.
Such that it's not like a centralized thing. You know, I think that we can move the cultural zeitgeist and stuff in this kind of distributed way where we're all hopefully interacting with our local communities and stuff. But, you know, I really think that, you know, more intentional relating in this regard could be a very powerful thing. And like people could visit and like spend a weekend like, you know, in a more natural environment and stuff, just to kind of counterbalance this matrixification of everything, which I despise. And yeah.
Matrixification. Yeah, and this is why like it's I remember when I was younger, like it was so much easier to just be around other people. It was really COVID. I mean, COVID changed everything. I was already kind of becoming a little bit of a recluse even before that, but like, I remember like, you know, I used to be part of like the punk rock scene, you know, and I would go to shows all the time, you know, I was constantly, you know, out, you know, I was either performing or hanging out with people or whatever. I mean, there was like actual social circles of weirdos you could go and hang out with. And
dude, I deliver Amazon packages, you know, and I'm just going through the hellish suburbs, no sort of communal vibe at all. It's just these isolated houses, you know, and it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe there's something when it comes to Steiner insofar as like, you know, that we would, you know, maybe we're destined to be more transhumanist in some sense, you know.
Steiner, I believe, could foresee the transhumanist movement, and he offered this. I'm quoting, "Everybody is obliged to undergo the battle. In its effects, it is experienced by everybody. There would be no greater fallacy than to say we must rebel against what technical science has brought to us in modern life. We must protect ourselves from Ahriman. We must withdraw from this modern life." He goes on to say, "In a certain respect, such an attitude would be an indication of spiritual cowardice. The real remedy," Steiner, "lies not in allowing the forces of the soul to weaken and to withdraw from modern life, but in so strengthening these forces that its pandemonium can be endured. World karma demands a courageous attitude to modern life, and that is why genuine spiritual science calls at the very outset for effort, really strenuous effort on the part of the human soul. We need to make these bodies have replaceable parts so that our bodies can exist forever. You call it transhumanism. We call it necessary. Look, this will be an important process for you as well as for me and my guys. Ari, we agree on this.
But just at least to like slow the roll, like in terms of counterbalancing this rapid accelerationist, futurist vibe that we're stuck in as a society, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately what's going to happen is those eggheads are going to have to get our hands dirty and learn how to like grow shit out of the ground like some filthy fucking peasants, which I'm not excited about. But
honestly, man, it might even be great, you know, because like, you know, it's more natural to our biology, you know, raising animals and stuff. You know, I think it's, even if there is no grid failure or like, you know, massive tsunamis or, you know, like anything of the sort, like it might just be better lifestyle in general, just to like, you know, be more traditional in that regard. But
well, I definitely got a feeling something's coming. It's probably going to start around July.
And I don't mean to high or sell, because I'm certainly you know, in love with my devices and such.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, you gotta love the technology and hate it.
I'm not trying to poo-poo the technologies, but you know, it's just kind of a balancing, and yeah, I think cool. I'll keep you.
You have a relationship with technology that needs to be renegotiated for
sure. Yeah.